Hello everyone, it is I, the Witch of Paint. This week I will bring you a painting of Mercury. The planet Mercury, not the silvery substance that's kind of dangerous, and also not the god Mercury, the Roman god, the Roman version of Hermes. Just to make that clear that this is the planet Mercury we're talking about. Anyways, after painting so many planets into the backgrounds of my Zodiac Fairy videos and struggling in some of them, I thought that I should perhaps get a little practice painting the different textures and colours on the planets themselves. And what better planet to start with than the first planet of our solar system, Mercury. Granted, this may be a little more colourful than what Mercury would look like in real life, but hey, that's all my artistic freedom at play. I actually had to try this twice, because the first time I attempted to scratch away some of the paint with the palette knife in order to get some white lines, but all it did was sort of destroy the paper. Probably shouldn't be trying this with the low quality paper that I am, but I suppose it also requires a little bit more experimenting from my part, because perhaps I was applying too much pressure. I don't know how some artists manage to scratch a white line into a painting without ruining the paper as well. Maybe I applied too much pressure or I just did too much scratching, but either way, first try was a disaster. And I'm glad this one is working out a lot better, mostly because I didn't use the palette knife. So first I took a large ruler and measured out where the center of my painting was. I marked that spot with a cross and set the ruler aside. Then, because I wasn't very careful with my fingers earlier, I accidentally smeared some indigo paint across the page, so I had to quickly take a brush and wash it out as well as I could before going in with my pair of compasses and drawing a circle. I wasn't very particular about how big that circle should be. I just did one that was vaguely big enough for me. And then I have the great idea to take some tape and stick it around the circle in like tape pieces to make sure that outside of the circle stays as clean as can get, sort of. Should have perhaps taped off the entire paper because I ended up splattering paint everywhere, but oh well. And once everything is well taped, I decided to just skip the sketch stage and just go straight in with my paints. I start out by going in with a mix I had on my Van Gogh palette from my last attempt of painting this planet, which was yellow ochre mixed with a tiny bit of burnt sienna. I paint that across the middle section, that was a bit lighter in my reference, and across the top right and going down towards the bottom of the planet. It's a bit difficult to describe because it's a circle, but I'm assuming you guys know what I'm talking about, considering you're seeing me paint / draw all of this while I'm talking about it. So for those areas, I basically mixed some indigo with a little Madder Lake Deep and some phthalo blue for one of the craters, because in the reference I had decided to go with, there was a slightly blue crater. Just gonna say, these colours might not be accurate to what the eye might see, but I thought for this challenge, I thought a more colourful planet would be more fun. It's still a picture of Mercury, so it doesn't really matter. I also add a little bit of lemon yellow mixed with some, like a tiny bit of indigo for a crater that is right above the blue one, that is a greenish yellow tone. And then with a clean brush, I basically splash a bunch of water over it. I also take my spray bottle and spray a little bit with that. And then I also splattered some actual paint onto the paper. And then I tilted the board around to make the colours mix together a little bit. And that was basically my first layer. I don't know why I put so much effort into that. All that I would have had to do for the first layer technically would have just been to lay down some colours, let them dry, and make sure it's some pale, because I was going to add more layers to this that would be darker. Okay, so layer 2 is very similar to layer 1 in terms of the colors and where I place them. It's just towards the end I decided to sprinkle a little bit of salt over the whole planet so that some mini craters would form in the blooms and stuff. This time this actually worked out quite well. I loved the way it turned out and definitely recommend this for painting planets. The third layer, same thing, except I also started using some opaque white, which I don't usually use, but in this case there were some thin lines I had to do, and having to paint around those would have been a true pain. Could have used some of my masking fluid, but I wasn't in the mood for potential paper rips, so I just used the opaque white from a palette to get the white spots that Mercury has, or at least that my reference of Mercury has. To the human eye, the planet would mostly appear to be a greyish brown, but I thought that would be too boring for a painting, so I chose to add more colour. After layer 3, I trust myself to add in some details like the individual craters, some shadows. I have more fun splattering paint around, and all in all, I'm just technically just messing around a bit with the different textures I could give Mercury. Of course, that means it's all not 100% accurate, but honestly, does it have to be? Regardless of how close it looks to Mercury in the end, it is going to look like a cool planet. And Mercury is a very beautiful planet if you ask me, at least if you added a little bit of colour and pizzazz. I used a darker mix of burnt sienna, yellow ochre and sepia to paint around some craters towards the top of the planet. Around the blue crater I paint in a little bit of phthalo blue and indigo to give it a little bit more definition. With even more opaque white, I add small splashes around the planet for some of the spots that were white in my reference. Obviously also not paying attention to making sure they were 100% in the right spot. Just sort of loosely splattering them across the page where they should be, kind of, at least in my opinion. As I'm going to move along in this planet painting series, I will first work through the planets of our solar system, then the moons of the solar system, and then see if I can find some images of other planets outside the solar system. Although, who knows when I'll get to the point of leaving the solar system in this series. With as many moons as some of our planets have, it might take me a couple of years, considering I paint more than just planets. I'm not solely focusing on planet painting, so this may take quite a while. But basically this is just for me to get a little better with painting planets, having a little bit of fun, and maybe one day have a space collection. Or perhaps I'll make myself a sort of spacey themed sketchbook, maybe with dark black paper, and then with metallic watercolors and perhaps a bit of gouache. I could paint myself planets in a sketchbook. That could be fun, and I would have all my planets in one little book. That's why I like sketchbooks so much. They're very handy because I can just look through all my paintings in a book and I don't have to open a box and then shuffle through a bunch of papers and stuff. I mean, a black sketchbook would be very fun if I could ever find a sketchbook with black paper. I'm gonna make a mental note that I'm going to have to look for a sketchbook with black paper in it. So, anyways, I have left a link to NASA's page about Mercury down below, just in case you guys are interested in it, and because I didn't really feel like talking about the planet itself this much, because I'm not an expert on planets. NASA knows what they're doing, I don't. So, for facts on Mercury, stick to the NASA people, not me. I'm just an artist who kind of likes to paint planets, and the most I know about Mercury is that it's closest to the sun, and it's named after the Roman god Mercury, who's the Roman version of the Greek god Hermes. Because renaming gods that are from a different culture is just so much fun. Besides, Mercury sounds a lot cooler than Hermes, right? I mean, imagine if we called the planet Hermes. I mean, I could kind of get used to it, but then I would have to call Jupiter Zeus. Technically they're both the same as well, but still. Ooh, no, Zeus. Jupiter is a lot cooler. The Romans just had cool names for everything, okay? Anyways, back on track with the painting. Let's not get distracted by random thoughts and ideas I have in my head suddenly. I left the background until the planet is completely done, since I wasn't going to make it particularly detailed anyway, because it's in space and there's not much in the background there. I could have made it a little dramatic by painting the sun somewhere in the painting, but that would have caused a new lighting scenario, and honestly, I only just thought about putting the sun in the background. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun after all. Like, from its surface, the sun would appear 3 times larger than it would on Earth, and I would have to compensate for that. Anyways, I could have done something with it, but I didn't think of doing it at the time. I know, disastrous. Ah well, it doesn't really matter anyway. Once the tape is removed from around my planet, I wet the entire paper and add in a lot of indigo, like really a lot, particularly at the edges and the corners, as I kind of wanted a little bit of a gradient where the sky is lighter around Mercury than it is around the edge of the paper. I have to add around 2 layers of paint to the background. In the second layer I add in a lot of Payne's grey at the edges as well, in order to really get those dark values in the corners of the painting. And because of how wobbly the paper got from my first layer, which was very wet, the dark paint kind of pooled in 2 places in the middle on the left side, which I did not want, so I tilted the board a bit in order to help the paint distribute itself a little bit more. This plan only kind of worked. In the end, I wasn't too happy with the painting distribution, but at this point, I just kind of wanted to finish the painting. You can also see some bits of the paper that are a little lighter and look just slightly weird. That's simply thanks to the tape that had been there. He saw me take it off, and I wasn't careful enough with making sure that the paper didn't simply go with the tape. But I decided the damage was not bad enough for me to restart again for the 3rd time, and I was happy with the planet, so I just left it as is, and in the end I don't think it was all that noticeable anyways. At least I hope so. Now that I've mentioned it, people are probably going to notice, aren't they? Anyways, after waiting for an eternity in real life for the paint to dry and finishing that one book I had left lying around for a while now, I decided to take my metallic watercolors from Van Gogh and sprinkle some silver and golden stars into the sky around Mercury, because in the end it did still look a little empty, and I felt like I just needed to add a tiny bit more, you know what I mean? This painting actually only took me around about 1 hour, which is why I didn't have to speed this one up quite as much as I had to with past paintings, where I've done 8 times speed, 12 times speed at one point, because I sometimes just do really long paintings for some reason. But this time I didn't have to speed it up as much because I managed to keep the painting to 1 hour. If we, of course, ignore the first attempt. I suppose if I had added that in as well, things would have been so much longer as well, but it doesn't really matter. So, as a final step, I am going to take off the tape, sign the piece, and I'm going to apologize now because my head is going to block the whole frame. I was standing up while I was painting this, so I had to really lean forward to sign. I didn't just have I couldn't just lean back and write it down. I had to bend over the paper to see what I was writing in the first place. Anyways, once the signature is completely done and I have removed my head from the frame of the video, we can now finally take a look at the final result together. I absolutely love the way that this planet looks, even if my first attempt at painting Mercury was not so great. I'm glad my second attempt turned into this awesome looking planet that does look at least enough like the reference of Mercury that I was using. I think people who know more about the planet's looks would maybe not recognize which planet I was trying to paint here, but I mean, it's in the title, so there's no possibility of misunderstandings, right? At least I hope so. Either way, the planet looks so cool. I love the pops of white, the two colourful craters in light yellow, green and blue, the contrasts of colours, how much fun I had splattering paint around during this painting. Yeah, I love this piece. Now, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, feel free to leave a like, comment something fun about planets, and perhaps, if you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. Check out my social media links and my Twitch account down below. For the time being, I am the Witch of Paint, and I shall see you all next Sunday. Bye! Oh, look who's made it to the end of the video. Well done. You know what's coming. Here are some outtakes for you. The planet Mercury, not the silvery substance. Ha! Off to a great start here. And what a better planet. What is it with my tongue today? And I just realised I haven't got any tea. Mercury. Mercury. Around the blue paper crater. My goodness.